You know that little feeling, that buzz you get? Maybe checking your email and seeing loyalty points pop up, or hitting a new goal on your fitness app.
Yeah, that little bit of satisfaction.
Exactly. Well, that feeling is actually a small window into something much bigger we're diving into today, gamification.
Ah, right. Taking game ideas into other areas.
Precisely. We've pulled together some, well, pretty interesting sources. We've got an article on gamification strategies for business, an editorial looking at psychological capital,
Sure.
especially for entrepreneurs.
Okay.
Then there's an article questioning the whole manifesting idea, a Wikipedia entry on the law of attraction, a business owner's take on what manifestation really means to them, and even some book excerpts on the psychology of belief itself.
So a real mix. What's the overall goal here then?
Good question. Our mission, really, is to sift through all this and pull out the actionable insights.
Yeah.
How can using game elements and understanding these sort of psychological drivers
Hmm.
help boost engagement, get results, in business, maybe even personally,
Mm.
but also look realistically at the beliefs behind some of these ideas and, well, the potential downsides too.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how gamification seems to tap into something really fundamental about us, that drive to achieve, to see progress, maybe even a little healthy competition.
Definitely.
The Everyone Social article gives a good definition to start us off. They talk about using game-like mechanics, think points, competition, rules to basically incentivize engagement and activities.
Uh-huh.
And the aim is to drive results in areas where you wouldn't normally find games, like employee engagement or marketing campaigns.
Right. Applying game thinking to non-game context.
Yeah.
And they point out that it's not just a niche thing either. Businesses are using this stuff everywhere.
Oh, yeah, whereabouts?
Sales, marketing, HR, even recruiting. The article gives examples like motivating sales teams, getting more leads, or setting up meetings with qualified candidates.
Makes sense. Using those mechanics to nudge behavior towards specific goals.
And the numbers they mention are pretty striking. Apparently 90% of employees, they say gamification makes them more productive.
90%. Wow.
Yeah. And workplaces using it, see like a 60% boost in engagement. And get this, organizations using these strategies are reportedly 7 times more profitable.
7 times. Okay, that definitely grabs your attention. It shows there's real potential there if it's done right.
Totally. And Everyone's Social piece shows how their platform uses it with leaderboards, right?
Yeah.
You see points for creating content, sharing, engaging.
So you get that visual feedback, your rank points, how you're doing compared to others.
Exactly. And they shared a case study and structure that really brings it home. They incentivized social sharing with prizes and, well, the results were kind of explosive. In just 2 months, 336% growth in users. And the amount of content shared, up by over 3,800%.
Whoa. Okay, that's significant.
Right. Shannon Ma from Instructure said the contests were incentivizing and exciting and really helped boost engagement continuously.
And I bet seeing those numbers climb is motivating in itself.
For sure. And I thought this was smart. They reset the leaderboards every Monday. Shannon mentioned it keeps the content fresh, gives a weekly snapshot of engagement.
So it gives people a fresh start, avoids that feeling of being permanently behind. Clever.
Yeah. It really highlights that this isn't about, playing games at work. It's about using those game mechanics strategically, showing progress, building engagement, which, as Everyone Social points out, leads to success for everyone involved.
So if a business is thinking about using gamification, what are the key things to keep in mind? The Everyone Social article had some tips, right?
It did, and really practical ones. First, think long-term. Don't just launch something flashy that fizzles out.
Right. Sustainability is key, not a one-off gimmick.
Exactly. They say don't go too deep too early. Build something that can last. Get as many people involved as possible. And importantly, be ready to adjust based on what's actually working.
Adaptability. Makes sense.
What else? Another big one. Be careful about overdoing the rewards.
Oh. You'd think big prizes would be super motivating.
You would, but they argue the competition itself should be a major driver. Relying too much on big rewards causes problems.
Like what?
Well, 2 things mainly. First, it might just cost too much long-term. And second, you risk creating false incentives. People might, cut corners or game the system just to win the prize, not for the actual goal.
Okay. So the reward becomes the only focus, not the behavior you wanted to encourage. Got it.
Precisely. And to keep that competition healthy, they stress creating a level playing field.
Meaning transparency.
Yeah. Share the scoring rules clearly. Everyone needs to understand the game, the business goal behind it, like leads or brand reach, and exactly how they can succeed. No secrets.
That builds trust, too, I imagine. People need to feel it's fair.
Absolutely. Yeah. And another point I liked was, don't just celebrate the number one winner.
Okay. Why's that?
Because high overall participation is a win in itself, even if a few top performers drive most of the, say, sales numbers. Measure performance partly on just taking part.
So reward engagement across the board.
Right. Reward everyone who participates. Otherwise, people might just drop off if they feel they can't win. In business, gamification is really about the team effort, not just individual glory.
That makes a lot of sense for morale and sustained effort.
And finally, they suggest using tools like their own naturally to track and share results easily. Because doing it all manually, that gets overwhelming fast.
Yeah, tracking points and progress for a whole team would be a nightmare without some kind of system. Okay, so that's the practical side of gamification. How does this connect to the psychological stuff you mentioned, like psychological capital?
Good transition. Yeah, the Frontiers editorial explores this idea of psychological capital, or PsyCap. They define it as a positive mental state. It's made up of 4 things. Optimism.
Okay, seeing the good side.
Resilience. Bouncing back from setbacks. Hope. Believing in future success. And self-efficacy.
Confidence in your own abilities.
Right, exactly. And the editorial argues this PsyCap is crucial, especially for entrepreneurs, to face challenges and find fulfillment.
And it's not just something you either have or you don't.
Apparently not. They suggest it can be developed through our thinking, our cognitive functions. And developing it has big payoffs. Better chances of business success, improved well-being in the organization, more commitment, higher productivity, all good things.
Interesting. How does it get developed, though, does the editorial say?
It connects it to things like curiosity. They mention D-type curiosity, the drive to fill information gaps, shares elements with PsyCap, like self-belief and resilience, and might influence starting a business in the first place.
Okay, so seeking knowledge builds confidence. Makes sense.
And then there's grit passion. Perseverance combined with real enthusiasm.
Stick up for things you care about.
Right. And they link that directly to the 4 parts of PsyCap. Effectiveness, hope, optimism, resilience. People with grit passion. They're goal-focused, see opportunities and difficulties, overcome barriers.
So if we loop back to gamification, those leaderboards, the points, how might they connect to PsyCap?
Well, you can see the potential links, can't you? Seeing your progress on a leaderboard. That could foster hope, right? Moving towards a goal.
Yeah, I can see that. Tangible progress.
Earning points, moving up. That could definitely boost self-efficacy, your belief you can achieve things.
Little wins reinforcing confidence.
Exactly. And maybe even just encouraging continued participation, even if you're not winning, could help build resilience, sticking with it.
That's a really interesting connection, using game mechanics not just for immediate results, but maybe to subtly build up those positive psychological resources over time.
Yeah, it's like the system itself reinforces that positive mindset. Now, this focus on belief and positive outcomes naturally leads us toward, well, manifestation.
Yes. The popular, sometimes controversial idea. What did the Psychology Today article say?
It explains the basic idea. Think positively about what you want, imagine it vividly, believe it'll happen, and you can make it real. Notice the emphasis on can.
Okay, so not guaranteed, but possible through belief and visualization.
Right. But it immediately flags a huge missing piece in the pop culture version. Action.
The practical step. Can't just wish for it.
Exactly. Positive thinking alone isn't enough. The pop version also often ignores, things you just can't control. External events, biology, psychological hurdles.
Real-world constraints.
But interestingly, the article does mention a link between visualizing goals and brain activity. It activates similar neural networks as actually doing the task, which ties into things like mental imagery in therapy, like CBT.
So there's some science behind the visualization part, at least in terms of priming the brain.
Seems so. And they talk about optimism bias, our tendency to think the future will be better. That obviously helps motivation.
Sure. Believing things can improve keeps you going.
But then they draw a really clear line. When does manifestation become magical thinking?
And when is that?
When you believe wishing alone is enough, no effort needed. That, the article stresses, is where psychological science says it becomes potentially harmful.
Harmful how?
Well, it can stop you from taking the actual necessary steps to achieve your goal. You think the wishing is doing the work.
Okay, so inaction based on false hope.
And potentially worse, what they call blaming the victim.
Yeah.
If you really believe thoughts create reality, then someone facing hardship, Did they just not think positively enough?
Oof. Yeah, that completely ignores systemic issues, luck, all sorts of things. Very problematic.
Totally. So the article's conclusion is basically, pop manifestation is mostly woo, but it contains scientifically backed bits like positive thinking and visualization, which can be helpful if you actually pair them with
And
action.
action is the key ingredient missing from the magical thinking version. Right. Now, manifestation is often linked to the law of attraction, isn't it?
It is. And the Wikipedia entry we looked at tackles that. It describes the law of attraction as a new thought spiritual belief.
Okay. What's the core idea?
Basically, positive thoughts bring positive experiences, negative thoughts bring negative ones. It's based on this idea that people and thoughts are pure energy attracting like energy.
Sounds a bit ethereal.
Well, the entry is very clear. It's widely considered pseudoscience. There's no empirical scientific evidence supporting it.
Good to have that context. So how does manifestation relate?
Wikipedia positions manifestation as a sort of modernized version. It often blends that law of attraction thinking with self-help stuff, visualization, positive affirmations, maybe asking the universe, but also sometimes including individual actions.
So manifestation is like law of attraction 2.0, potentially with a bit more emphasis on doing something.
Kind of. And they also mentioned the lucky girl syndrome trend, seen as a Gen Z take on it all.
Oh yeah, what's that?
It's this belief that good things happen to you simply because you are lucky, and you affirm that luck. But again, no scientific basis, and it's drawn criticism.
Criticisms like?
Being called the smuggest TikTok trend yet, potentially promoting toxic positivity, and, like the simplistic manifestation idea, ignoring real-world inequalities.
Right. It's easy to feel lucky when you're already in a privileged position, perhaps.
Exactly. But then we also looked at a business owner's perspective from Hendershot Wealth Management. They offer a more, let's say, grounded view.
How do they define manifestation?
They acknowledge the skepticism, but define real manifestation for them as visualizing a future, conceiving specific outcomes, and then crucially taking action to make it happen.
Action again. Seems to be a recurring theme for the more practical viewpoints.
Absolutely. They basically argue every business achievement is a form of manifestation in this sense. You have an idea, you plan specific steps, you work to make it real. Clear path from idea to action.
That sounds much more like strategic planning and execution coupled with a positive, goal-oriented mindset.
Exactly. It grounds the idea in tangible effort.
Right.
Now, all this talk about belief in game outcomes, belief in yourself via PSYCAP, belief in future possibilities through manifestation or goal setting, it really makes you wonder about belief itself.
Yeah, what fundamentally is belief?
The excerpts from the Psychology of Belief book try to unpack that. It suggests belief starts from a sort of feeling background, rooted in instinct. But it definitely has cognitive parts too. Thoughts, reason.
So feeling and thinking combined.
Kind of. While feeling can idealize things, the book argues that higher, more developed beliefs need grounding in thought and reason. Some philosophers even see reason as the ultimate foundation.
Any specific philosophers mentioned?
Hume comes up, distinguishing between just thinking about something and actually believing it's true.
Yeah.
There's a difference in the feeling, perhaps. It also explores the idea that belief is always linked to truth or reality, somehow, even when it's just a feeling, and introduces Stout's view. Belief as the mental act of recognizing reality. He even says doubting or disbelieving also implies you're acknowledging something objective exists, you're just denying it applies.
That's interesting. Even disbelief is a form of belief about reality.
Right. And Lipp's idea is mentioned, judging something as real is an act of mental consent, involving a feeling of effort or constraint. Like reality pushes back.
Wrestling with what's real.
Then there's a contrast. Schultz viewing axioms' basic assumptions as expressions of will versus the view of them as necessary laws of thought. And William James, famously, saw belief as fundamentally a feeling about reality. For him, the opposite of one belief isn't doubt, it's just another belief.
So we're always operating within some framework of belief.
Seems to be the argument. And the book concludes powerfully. Belief is essential for life and action. It drives energy, fuels achievement. A strong will, strong energy, they say, is linked to a strong living faith or belief in what you're doing.
Wow. So belief isn't just passive acceptance, it's an active force. Okay, so pulling all these threads together, what are the main takeaways?
Well, first, gamification. It clearly works. Using game mechanics boosts engagement, productivity. The results can be impressive.
But needs careful handling.
Definitely. Long-term view, focus on participation and intrinsic motivation, not just big, flashy rewards, and transparency is key.
And those strategies can potentially strengthen psychological capital, hope, self-belief, maybe resilience.
Right. Feeding into that positive can-do mindset.
Yeah.
Then there's manifestation.
The pop version has issues, mainly missing the action step and ignoring reality.
But the underlying ideas, positive thinking, visualization, have scientific backing if combined with effort. It's the magical thinking part that's problematic.
Contrasting with the more grounded view, intention plus action equals results.
Exactly. And underpinning all of this is belief itself. Whether it's a feeling or a reasoned conclusion, it seems fundamental to motivation, perception, and action.
It's the engine driving much of what we do.
Absolutely. Which brings us to a final thought for everyone listening. Considering this interplay, right, between gamification's pull, psychological capital's strength, and your own beliefs about achieving goals,
What's the takeaway question?
what's one small, concrete, action-oriented step you could take today, maybe at work, maybe personally, to intentionally apply one of these ideas? Whether it's setting up a mini challenge for yourself, consciously focusing on a small win to build efficacy, or grounding a big goal with clear, actionable steps.
Just one small thing to put an idea into practice.
Exactly. We really encourage you to maybe look closer at these sources. Think about how these concepts connect to your own interests, your own challenges. It's fascinating stuff.